Hi guys, ArchieLuxury. Go to f2bbs.com. www.f2bbs.com. The last bastion of free speech on the interweb. Hey guys, it's your pontiff, ArchieLuxury on the Paul Pluta channel. I'm Rebecca and I'm doing some paid reviews. This is paid review 21QA 56. Quick wristwatch check. I'm wearing an Omega Speedmaster Man on the Viking Moon. Man on the Viking Moon. This is the 1861 movement. The big box before the new coaxial 3861. Okay, let's jump straight in. Dear ArchieLuxury, I recently found your YouTube channel and really enjoy your content. The comments are out of control, but I do enjoy reading them. Anyway, I am new to the watch world and decided to get a Rolex 14060 no-date Submariner. The dial, hands and bezel are the original tritium and do have an aged look to them. The bezel is knackered, but the pip is in good shape. I'm going to send the watch into Rolex Service Center in Dallas for its first service in 20 years. The watch needs a full service, new crystal, new bracelet, and a polish. I would like to get a new bezel, but if I do that, then I should probably get a new dial and hand so all the lume matches. So my questions are, how do you feel about Rolex service parts all over an older watch? Is a 14060 sub worth keeping original? It would be nice to see the Super Luminova at night and have the watch functioning as Rolex intended. I appreciate your advice and insight. Thank you, Arch. And $50 is included because I know you don't do shite for free. Brian. Okay, Brian, thank you so much for sending this request in. Brian, stop! Stop! The worst thing you can do is send this into the Rolex Service Center. Man, this is dumb. Now, I gotta be completely honest with you there. On the modern Rolexes, sure, there's nothing wrong with sending them in. But if you've got a vintage, which is what this Rolex is, a 14060, this is the no date. So these came out, the 5513s kind of ended the late 80s, early 90s. And then the 14060 came out early 90s. And it had a production run until the 11460. The ceramic came out. So quite a 20-year production sort of run. Now, this is a nice, honest watch, and sending this in, this is absolute stupidity. Now, let me explain the reason why it's stupidity. Number one, you are going to send in the bracelet. They're going to keep the old bracelet, sell you a new one. Nah. If you were going to send this in, you would keep the bracelet and say you've lost the bracelet. The old bracelet, even though it may seem knackered to you, is actually very valuable. The other thing is here, your particular watch itself there, what I would be doing is, instead of sending it in to Rolex, Rolex would try and get this watch back to the original spec, the waterproofing, the lume, etc., etc. What you're better off to do is taking it to an independent Rolex watchmaker who understands vintage and who will restore it to vintage spec, because there are sometimes you want to do things which are dumb, whereas you've got to now my honest advice is, if now I don't have huge contacts, but I'd go to somewhere like Kenny Nguyen Jewelers on Time. Now I do, David SW does sponsor me, but he doesn't really do the vintage servicing. But Kenny Nguyen's a great guy. I would take it to him. get him to sympathetically restore the piece. And by getting it serviced through Kenny, the old parts can come back to you. Now, as far as the dial goes, I got to be completely honest with you, okay? I'm very pleased you sent this request to me before you did something so damn stupid as sending it in. Now, this would completely destroy the value. The lume, the patina. Man, if you want to have a modern Rolex, you want a modern spec, go and buy a new one. Go and buy a new Rolex. I wouldn't, when I say vintage is what I'd call the plastic 5513. That's the previous model to yours. Yours is kind of classic, like a 60s E-type. It's not a vintage like a 1920s or 1930s sort of car. This is a classic. It's a classic watch. Now, to be completely honest with you, you as a wristwatch novice would have no idea to judge condition. The bracelet may seem scuffed and marked, but to a proper watch person, they'd say, hang on a minute, that's actually pretty damn good. You don't want to muck around with these things. So I think the big problem is you don't really know what you're doing. You're not really able. I remember years ago, I had a guy who asked me, he told me, look, I've got I think he had a secretary who had this watch that belonged to her ex-husband, and it was a vintage 1680 red sub. And he said, oh, it looks very rough and it's probably not worth much. I said, hang on a minute. Vintage 1680. He sent me the photos, never polished. It looked to the novice who would say, oh, this is beaten up. But to an enthusiast, they go, well, barn fine, don't touch it. It was very original. And it's funny, what used to happen is with classic cars, people would try and restore them so they were better than showroom condition. Then people said, hang on a minute, we want originality. We want the little kinks and wrinkles and things like that there. So it became very desirable to have one that sort of wore its age. Now, I got to be totally honest with you. You've taken atrocious photos. You've probably used a flash on your iPhone to take these photos, which gives it a very harsh, probably they're not a good representation of what the watch is really like. My advice to you is, number one, on vintage classic watches like this, do not, whatever you do, send it to Rolex Service Center. You want to go to an independent who understands the vintage market. That is very, very important. You've got to understand this. It's very, very sad. You've got to take it to a watchmaker who sympathetically will restore it. Forget the lume. You want to keep it tritium. These are worth the big. You want to keep tritium original. I'd even keep the insert original. You say it's beat up and that. I think you're really in no phase to really judge. I think you may give the case a sympathetic polish by somebody who knows what they're doing, but I would not. The dial hands and bezel are original tritium and have an aged look. That's patina, and people love that. The bezel is knackered. Well, who are you to know? Are you a vintage expert, or you're just layman saying it looks a bit knocked about? So that may not. The pip is in good condition. I'm going to send the watch to Rolex Service Center in Dallas. Big mistake. The watch needs a new full service. Yeah, well, you can get an independent to do that. New crystal, perhaps. Do not send the old bracelet in. They will keep it, and they'll charge you for a new one. If you were stupid enough to send this into the Rolex Service Center in Dallas, you'd at least keep the bracelet, because that is worth thousands of dollars. And a polish. Well, I would like to get a new bezel, but then see, this is vintage. Now, I got to be totally honest with you. The bezel itself is aluminum. It doesn't have glow on it. The only thing that glows is the pip, and no need to change the dial. That is absolute stupidity. This is rookie mistake 101. Rookie disaster 101. So I'll answer your questions. How do you feel about Rolex service center parts all over an older watch? I've just told you. Absolute stupidity. That's an idiot move to do. Is the 14060 sub worth keeping original? Definitely. Absolutely. Definitely. It would be nice to see. It would be nice if you weren't such an idiot. That would be really nice. I mean, really, Luminova. Man, if you want the Luminova, get a new Rolex. This is a sacred object. Absolutely, you have no idea. You should keep it as original as possible. So my advice to you is get an independent specialist to service this watch. Kenny Nguyen Jewelers on Time is one recommendation. You want somebody who will sympathetically restore it, not butcher this beautiful classic watch. So to be honest with you, you are in no way able to make any opinion or value judgment. Your opinion ain't worth jack shite. Okay, let's just be clear there. So thankfully you haven't sent that watch off to the Rolex service center. That'd be a mistake. So that is my advice there for you. So hopefully we have saved this one from being molested by the service center, because you're gonna cost yourself thousands. They're gonna keep the bracelet and the parts. Absolute rookie mistake. So hopefully we've saved you from doing that. Okay, guys, like, subscribe, tell your friends, put some comments below. What do you think here? And also, guys, remember, I can't survive on Google Ads alone. I need these paid reviews to keep me full time. Without these paid reviews, I can't do the YouTube gold that I produce. Guys, I will see you in the next one. Get a paid review done. And don't forget, you can also sponsor me on Patreon. Patreon allows you to send a little bit of a payment every month so I can keep making independent content. Okay, guys, we will see you in the next one. Hi, guys, ArchieLuxury. And who do I recommend in America? In America, who do I recommend for quality pre-owned wristwatches? David SW, David SW, David SW. Go to davidsw.com. He is the best, the greatest pre-owned dealer in all of the United States of America. David SW, David SW, David SW. Hey guys, ArchieLuxury. Who do I recommend for watches in Brisbane and Sydney? Vintage Watch Co. That's correct. Vintage Watch Co. in Brisbane Arcade in Brisbane and the Strand Arcade in Sydney. Vintage Watch Co. Brisbane and Sydney. Ronnie, I've known him since the late 90s. Ronnie is a top bloke. Luke is a great guy. Vintage Watch Co. That is who I recommend in Australia. Check out Vintage Watch Co. and the guys' amazing range of watches. They also do service and repairs. Vintage Watch Co. That is where the Pontiff goes. You know, some of my Pateks came from Vintage Watch Co. That's right, guys. Vintage Watch Co.